What's up, nerds? This is MonsterKoala, and today I'm here to bring you all the new content springing up around Terminus. This is Tavern Talk with my friend Rezum After Sex.
Hey, what's going on, guys? The name is Rezum After Sex. Very excited to be here today to do Tavern Talk with my man MK and spread some news around about Pantheon.
Yep, so basically what we're doing is we're going to try to gather all that information that's come in on Pantheon through the month and show you guys where you can find all that. So first things first, we're going to do the newsletter. The main newsletter was super interesting, gave us some class reveals, some lore, a little bit of PAX coverage, and special community spotlight. We'll get to all that. So first thing is the class reveals. These were interesting because they were so detailed. They had a little bit of lore. They had basic ideas on what they think that the classes should be, and then they had even some sweet abilities that I don't know if that's a complete list of abilities, most likely not, just a little bit to get us excited. So Rezum, what were you excited about with the rogues specifically?
Well, about the rogue specifically, they talked about this one ability called Length of Rope. And when I first read it, I was like, Length of Rope, I mean, people are going to be climbing, yeah, okay, cool, we can go up a mountain. But then I started thinking about it a little bit deeper. How could this change the entire encounter with the mobs? It kind of changes the MMO genre from this two-dimensional encounter of what's in front of you and what's behind you to now a three-dimensional strategic encounter to, all right, let's get our healers and our ranged DPSs up on this cliff or rock face or maybe even a balcony, much like we saw in the stream recently with the Hive Leader, where they had the balconies around the main room with the mobs. Maybe you get those important classes up to that safe area while the tanks and the melee DPSs do work on that mob. I thought it's really cool that, it can change the entire platform for an MMO from a 2D to a 3D strategy encounter.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about that. Length of rope, the fact that they're bringing in so much utility as far as that goes, is amazing. That's one of my favorite things about Pantheon so far. And with rogues, I gotta say my favorite thing was just the art, man. Like, you gotta keep those dwarves at the forefront of Terminus, in my opinion. And
hey, get that right, man.
and yeah, having a female dwarf as a rogue, you just got, now that they've done it, it sets a precedence, and we're just gonna have more dwarves, and I love that. It's amazing. What about the Rangers? I'm not the most excited about a Ranger, but I do like what they're doing. What do you think?
Well, the one thing that I can appreciate about the Ranger, because I did play a Hunter in World of Warcraft, the vanilla, and I had a survivalist hunter. And when I would get in groups like, oh my god, you're a survivalist hunter, like, why even waste your time? We need DPS. But I was like, I bring utility to the foreground of this fight in our group. And what they're doing with the Ranger and Pantheon that I can appreciate is they do have things like warning shot. What it is the Ranger shoots an arrow, and whenever a mob gets close to that, it warns him and the group, hey, this roamer has now come into your area. He also has these cool trap utilities to where now he can be what I refer to myself as a class protector. I would almost stick near the healer, so if he did end up pulling aggro, I could put my traps down and buy the group time to finish up one mob and then resituate ourselves to take on that second that would have killed the healer otherwise. So that's one thing that I'm most excited about the Ranger.
Yeah, I didn't even think of it as a protector of ones who stay in the back. That's interesting. I think that's a good point for them. The utility that they get with warning shot and being able to stay back and forward probably really helps us. I wonder if they're gonna have some aggro utility for them for that specifically.
I could hope at some point they do.
One thing that I was surprised about, but is interesting to me, is that it seems like there's not going to be any pets. You're not going to have a pet that you run around with. You're actually going to summon creatures from the wild. I think it's called Beckon. What do you think about that?
I saw that too, and I mean, I'm not super concerned about the hunter not having a permanent pet, because I did see one of the skills that they had say that you can charm a pet, it will no longer be aggressive to you. And in my mind, that kind of screams, all right, I can go out, I can get a pet, it may be a limited pet, but I can still go and acquire one. It may not be my permanent pet, but I'm not that concerned with that, because you can still have abilities that do involve pets, even though they're not permanent, much like the bear that we saw. The bear can be running up and do a knockdown on the mob. I mean, something like that, I actually find more value in than just a controllable DOT, because that's what all pets really were, controllable DOTs.
Yeah.
And I'm excited that Pantheons, they're going a completely different direction with it, which is something, I mean, I appreciate and I've been waiting for.
I think for what I thought from a somewhat lore perspective is that it kind of makes sense with a ranger in the same way that a druid communes with nature. A ranger also communes with nature, but it's specifically with the life, the movable wildlife within that nature. And so being able to beckon literally anything he wants shows me that the ranger has a closer connection to nature than we've seen in rangers before. And maybe that's what they're trying to get at.
That's absolutely true, because, I mean, we did see how they will be able to control hawks to kind of survey ahead so you know what you're coming up against, and also little ferrets on the inside, which brings me back to a show I used to watch. I think it was like the Beastmaster. Yeah. I was like, oh man, that'd be such a cool ability to have, and bam, here it is. I'm very excited to see how rangers are going to use that to their advantage.
Yeah. All right. What about monks? The chakra system sounded interesting. I'm kind of afraid that it's going to be close to like the rogue from Warcraft, just the way that they explained it. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. My only real fear is I'm not a huge fan of games that are rotationally based, much like Final Fantasy XIV.
Right.
It's almost 100%. Rotation based, and how good are you at rotations? And it sounds like part of this aspect is being implemented into the monk, but I think they're going to do it in a creative way. And what I mean by that is however many chakras you build up gives you the capability to release other abilities. So it's more like a combo than a rotation. So your different chakras, some are going to be able to taunt mobs, some will be able to heal you, and some will be able to do massive amounts of damage. While stunning the mob and stunning yourself because you just released this huge burst of energy. But one thing I am interested about is seeing how you can synergize the monks with the rangers with the rogues. 3 different DPS classes, and it's going to take a lot of communication, which is what Pantheon is kind of basing their entire forefront on, is community communication with each other. So let's think about this. The rogue has his blackjack kick. It's going to be lowering the AC of the mob. The ranger, it was a melee attack. I can't remember the name for the life of me. It also lowers the AC, and this monk has a chakra system where he builds all this up. Maybe he says, all right, guys, I'm at 5 chakras. Use your blackjack kick. Use your AC reduction. And then that way, when he does that 6th and final chakra, he can release that energy, and he turns into this big old burst damage, which would be really exciting for the players and those who help that monk get to that point.
That's awesome. I very much agree. I honestly wasn't super excited about monks other than the feign death because I didn't really see that, myself. I saw it in like hunters, and it was a escape. It wasn't a pulling utility or anything like that. But
that's how I've always seen it as well. It's like, oh crap, I pulled too many people. Let me just feign death now.
Right. But they seem super interesting, especially with the chakra system, and I'm hoping that, like you were saying, it's going to be a lot like that. We're going to have to synergize our AC debuffs so that we can get that full punch on that monk. Just whoever does the most damage, hit those AC debuffs, and then boom, open up that 6th chakra gate and just explode things. That sounds awesome to me. I couldn't have said it better myself, even though I tried, and it was, not better. All right, so one thing that I'm super excited about with the newsletter is the Rogues Gallery, which is like the lore section, and so far they've done a couple. the ones I remember have been the Ratmen, which are super awesome, and then now the North Tusk Orcs. So in this, the devs outline the background, culture, and other details about the Orcish race. They even mentioned the Bloodsworn Covenant, which was apparently founded before any of the Sacred Six came to Terminus, and it binds all of the tribes of orcs together. Super interesting to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was looking through it as well, and the most interesting thing to me is how much love and appreciation they put into their concept ideas for orcs. Because when you look at other games, like an orc is an orc is an orc, it's just got a reskin on a different color. Hey, if it's in a cold area, it's nice and blue.
Right.
If it's in a hot area, it's red. If it's in a wooded area, green, whatever. But with VR and Pantheon and what they're doing, it's almost like they thought, all right, how did these orcs, even though they all came from one central location at one time, spread out over the vast areas of Terminus, how would they have evolved within that time span? And we see now that these orcs who are in these cold regions, they've grown hair, but visually you can still represent them as these are orcs. But they have evolved by growing heavy amounts of hair on their body to keep warm. Those that are in the desert areas, they have almost like a scaly appearance, but you can still recognize them as an orc. Their skin is a little bit more tan red to deal with the sun, belly is a little bit yellow so that the sunlight doesn't burn them too bad. And those that are in the forest, I mean, they do have a green appeal like we might expect, but they're going to have these wooded plants almost growing on them, really blended into the environment, probably for hunting reasons, you could assume, as far as their evolution goes. But something like that, I mean, that's immersion. That's everything I've ever wanted in a game.
I mean,
it's more than just a reskin, it's evolution.
It speaks, I think, to what they're trying to do with Pantheon as a whole. Like, they're trying to think of every little aspect, evolution even, whenever you have a world that is so affected by magic. I feel like a lot of people who write about these things don't take that into account, or at least don't make that something terribly important. Like, you have your orcs, they're one orc, they're great, and that's it. But these are, you know, they're taking so many things into account, like their location, what they'll look like because of that. I'm just hoping that we can fully get these kinds of things into the game and looking good. And I don't think they're going to have a problem with that. What do you think? How do you feel about like how the character and player models and NPC models should look as opposed to how they look now, and what you're seeing with the orcs right here?
Well, one thing that I do like is they're trying a different avenue. I mean, we see this already with the halflings. I mean, they look like Rufio's Lost Boys. I absolutely love it. I'm going to be playing a halfling myself, a halfling warrior. What I'd like, though, is they are taking that different avenue. They're looking different, but they still have that same original feel. So it's almost like coming home, but it's been redecorated.
Right.
It's absolutely awesome.
That's the way I feel about like most of the races that they have on Terminists. Fantastic. All right, so now the next piece of the newsletter is PAX's coverage. It's pretty, self-explanatory. The devs kind of talked a little bit about PAX and how great it was, and they had some interesting insights, but nothing terribly related to the game. If you guys want to go and read that, it's just a good little read to know. It really helps you know that the devs are in this with us. Like, they're just as excited as we are. They're super interested in the community also, which they talk about a little bit in that coverage. And then also, right after that coverage, they have the community spotlight with Temmi, who is great. If you haven't seen her videos, you'll find her at Temmi Talks. She's not on Twitter, so that's not at Temmi Talks, but that's her YouTube channel, and she's done some lore stuff in the past, and she's also done some crafting, I think. A couple of various 15-minute videos, or, she's a really good person to follow. But they asked some questions for her in the community spotlight. Go check that out if you want. So right here, we're just going to go over some of the tweets that Pantheon, at Pantheon MMO, has released. just some interesting things, a little bit of news, a little bit of polls, a couple things. So what they tweeted today a little bit earlier was, what is your preferred area of expertise? Tank, healer, DPS, or crowd control, and why? So I went ahead and just put mine in as a tank, because that's what I'm most interested in. And then, so for the percentages, we have, as of right now, we have 21% tank, 27% healer, 35% DPS, and then 17% crowd control, which was not surprising to me at all. Like, with my experience in Warcraft and stuff like that, tanks and healers are definitely in the minority, and DPS, everybody wants to be DPS, which is fine. I mean, you have less to worry about, I suppose, less blame to go around. And then, interesting thing about this, though, is that the fact that crowd control is a big deal in this game. 17% said that. I wonder where that 17% would go if crowd control wasn't present, and I would guess a lot of that would go to damage. But either way, that was interesting. What about you, Rezum?
See, the thing I find most interesting about that is nowadays in MMOs, it almost feels like the DPS gets all the blame. You're not burning them down fast enough. But yeah, it's interesting you bring up crowd control because it seems like in Pantheon, almost there's going to be more classes than just the Enchanter who has that flavor or flair of being able to control the encounter. I mean, we all know rogues are going to have smoke and mirrors. I don't know what other classes might get a taste of crowd control, but it seems like it's going to be more than just the Enchanters. So maybe some of those who did pick that DPS are also going to have a tiny aspect of crowd control throughout their gameplay experience.
Yeah, I agree. What about you on the spectrum? Where would you put yourself there?
Oh, me on the spectrum? Tank.
Warrior.
All right. Halfling warrior, that's right. Because I hear they're coming out with a racial skill where the halflings can jump up on the shoulders of another race and they can kind of fight like Goro from Mortal Kombat. So I'm really excited about that.
All right, let's not spread too much misinformation here. I mean, that would be awesome. Especially, like, I'm running around as a dwarf, and if you could get on me, and then we would form the size of a human, and we would be that much more...
Wonder Twins activate.
Yeah. This one was interesting to me because I have a specific opinion on it myself. Have you ever played a character that is the opposite in gender to yourself?
Actually, yeah, I have. Back in my days of playing EverQuest Online Adventures on the PS2, I had a female magician named Mulan, and I didn't really feel that much different. I mean, I'm not biased, unbiased. I could really go either way. I mean, in Pantheon, I plan on playing a male just because I can get more immersed in my character, but as far as does it matter, no, not really. What about yourself?
So for me, whenever I was in Warcraft, probably 5 years into it, I decided to add a little bit more to my gameplay and start to role play. And I mean, before that, I would play male characters, but after that, I had a reason because I just wasn't confident enough to be able to role play a female. So I just stuck with the male, and that's entirely a personal thing, and I'm probably going to continue it.
I completely understand. I mean, what type of role playing did you do? Did you get big immersion in role playing, or was it just very, very minor?
Well, personally, I usually create a little backstory for my characters and stuff like that, so it kind of helped me flesh that out and then continue the story. And I kept away from the ERP and Goldshire and stuff like that. It was difficult to do sometimes. That was something else that I was kind of wary about playing a female character because what's not terribly surprising is that there's a lot of lonely people who roleplay, and whether or not they're looking for that ERP, it comes out. It's just human nature, and that's fine. But I want to create interesting stories with my characters. I don't want to sit there and repeat, my my character's personal feelings about the politics of the day, so that we can get closer as characters. It's
right. I feel it.
It's a exercise in futility, in my opinion. So. Yeah, for me, I wanted to keep things relatively serious. I wanted to be a cool guy, so I stayed with what I knew, and I've never been one of those guys to like stare at my characters, but I want to be in the game. I want to be immersed into it, and for me, part of that is playing a male character. That's that's the long and short of it.
I completely agree with you right there. I mean, I don't think I've hit a lonely enough point where I'm like, I'm going to create this female character. It's just not my cup of tea. Not my cup of tea.
Yeah, they didn't create a poll for that one. There were some people who do, or some people who don't. If you guys are interested in that,
That's because it want to be an honest poll.
Yeah. But if you guys are interested in that, you can take a look at that conversation. So this is one thing that some people are having a hard time with. This next one is, while Pantheon is primarily a PvE game, we will have separate PvP servers, so let's do a quick head count. How many PvP and RP fans do we have within our awesome community? So they had 4 options here: PvE, PvP, RP, combination of the above. We had 55% PvE, 15% PvP, 9% RP, 21% combination of the above. So for me, like, I'm a rating guy. If PvP is a thing, I like for it to be relatively structured. In the way of arenas or whatever. I have a hard time. It's difficult to say, because there's been plenty of times where I've been out in a PvP server just questing, and then I get into this interesting lock of butting heads with this random dude just on the other side who is trying to quest himself, and we have this kind of interesting dynamic for 30 minutes or so, where I kill him, he kills me, and we chase each other until we both can complete the quest and move on. So that's a lot of fun. But with Pantheon, being that it's a group thing, like they're trying to keep the social aspect and keep people in groups working together, I don't really want to see, it would be interesting, but it would take a lot of time to just see these little skirmishes happen in the middle of a dungeon. It's just going to slow down progression that much more. If people are worried about corpse runs, they're going to, hate that. So that's kind of my little take on it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Me, myself, I am PvE all the way, player versus environment. I've tried it in World of Warcraft in its vanilla days, and I just felt like I got burnt by it, and it's hard to go back and trust a game that says, PvP shards, it'll be fun, don't worry about it. I got body camped, and for the first, maybe 48 hours of playing the game, I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't even do anything. I can't even enjoy the game. But my friend was on the server, so I was like, I want to support him, play a fun game, woohoo, awesome. But yeah, I'm completely PvE myself. If we had a very structured player versus player type of feeling or scenario where maybe we were fighting each other for a camp, we could set ourselves up for a duel or a group duel, and the spoils go to victor. Whoever wins that little duel, that PvP battle, gets the camp, no questions asked. It's very community policed. But that's my stance on it, at least.
Well, I'm hoping, and surely this will be the case, they'll have those kinds of duels, whether it's PvP or PvE.
Well, I would remember back in EverQuest Online Adventures when a cleric would actually duel each other, and it might last about an hour, because the cleric wasn't doing enough damage to the warrior can out damage the heals of the cleric, and it just went on and on and on until somebody got tired and said, all right, you have it, you won.
Right. Okay, so for the next one, do you plan your gaming sessions out in advance, or do you just log in and do whatever you feel like at the time? Personally, it's kind of a mixed bag. Usually whenever I'm by myself or it's just a normal day, I'll sit down and just kind of do whatever I feel like. Other days, you know, you have raiding and stuff like that. So you have those gaming sessions that are planned out, and then most of the time I just kind of do whatever I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much in the same boat. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us cool gamers are now family people. We have jobs, we have kids. We're almost planning our games around when we actually have time. And for me, I don't have a set schedule. So when I log in, I usually see who's in, see who I can group up with, and see if I can't make some new friends at the same time.
Nice. I 100% agree. For this one, they say Eridune and Joppa visit the GameSpace game show tonight at 7, which was on May 18th, to talk Pantheon, classes, and more. And they have a link right there to the MMORPG Twitch. If you guys want to look through those videos and find it, you absolutely can. So that's all we're going to do for the tweets. Now we're going to bring you the information throughout the community that has come to Terminus in the last month. So first and foremost, we have the Voices of Terminus. You want to talk about them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a V myself, so got to represent my boys.
Of course. Same
right.
here. Same here.
So this past month, the Voices of Terminus, you know, they've released about 5 episodes. They're always intriguing, always good concepts. They have some really good Q&As with the devs. They get information that not everybody gets. But their episode 118, they had an interview with Bazgrim about all the stuff that he had experienced at PAC East, including his sit down with one of the devs where they did talk about the bard that they're going to be possibly displaying during release. So very excited about hearing about that. Also had episode 119 where they had a player Q&A with Pantheon Radio. Madak, I can't even pronounce it.
I think it's Madaguk.
Madaguk?
Yeah.
It sounds a lot better coming out of your mouth. But yeah, he does Pantheon Radio, which we'll get into here in just a little bit. And then episode 120, which is one of my favorites. They had the concerns past, present, and future. Sat down with one of the devs, Kilson. He gave him a lot of good questions. He gave a lot of good feedback, a lot of things that I thought he wasn't going to be able to talk about. So, I mean, if you want to find some in-depth detail, things that you might not have known from reading the newsletters, this is one that you definitely want to check out. So if you really like classes and archetypes, my recommendation is checking out their episode 121. It's about the Paladin. One thing that BOT does very good during their archetype videos is bringing up interesting skills and abilities. Some of the things you'll be hearing about is ideas they have for auras, which I never thought about for a Paladin before, but it's a really cool concept. Different healing concepts as far as indirect, direct healing, and then some armor ideas, like how do we want these Paladins to look? Always really riveting ideas. So if you're driving to work or going on a long vacation, I highly recommend just popping this on your YouTube, giving it a listen, and kill an hour or two. It's an absolutely great episode. Is there any archetype class videos you're looking forward to that the BOT will be doing in the future, MK?
Well, first I'll say, I really enjoy their archetype and subclass videos because I'm one of those people who are coming into Pantheon having not played EverQuest. And what they do best in these videos, I think, is talk about what things were like back then, very specifically, and kind of talk about how it might be implemented in Pantheon. And of course, what archetype I'm looking forward to is the warrior. Warriors, everybody says that they're self-explanatory, but with the inclusion of crowd control as crowd control as a sort of subclass, almost mechanic of a class itself, the entire enchanter. I think that the warrior is going to have some of those things, and I'm really excited to see what that is. And of course, I'll be playing one, as will you.
There you go, loving it, man.
All right, and also they have episode 122. By the time this episode releases of Tavern Talk, VOT's interview with Joppa and Justin will be available. Joppa is the lead designer and loves to talk about class mechanics, and Justin's the genius that put together all the lore. And I personally actually submitted several questions for him on the lore, and I'm so excited to hear those answers. Next, we have Sacred. In the past month, he has released 4 discussion videos. The first one was episode 34, Let's Talk Pantheon, Loot. Sacred talks the pros and cons of the loot system that we've seen in the past with Dayhawk and Solitude, amongst others. Episode 35 was Quality of Life Changes. He talked quality of life systems in Pantheon with suggestions like an in-game word processor, which I would love. It's basically an in-game journal where you can write whatever you need to. And also he talks about maps versus no maps, that kind of thing.
So this episode really stuck out to me. One of the main topics that Sacred was discussing was a very controversial one in my mind, and that's group queuing versus looking for a group system. So the interesting part is I'm an old school MMO player. I know that I used to just send out in chat that I am looking for a group, this is my level, this is my class, who can I build a relationship with? And since we both invested time in this group, we care about each other. How are they doing? How is their day going? Everything like that. And when I started playing World of Warcraft later on in the years, they have a queue system. And one big thing I noticed was, yeah, it was more time effective, but nobody talked in the group. Nobody really cared. They didn't say hello, they didn't say goodbye, they didn't say, hey, great poll, great DPS, nothing. It was just very lackluster. So in my opinion, like, I hope that Pantheon goes with the looking for group system. It will be more time consuming, but I think in the end, you're going to get more bang for your buck.
I 100% agree with all of that. But I think that spending time looking for people and not just queuing up and looking for a group is going to help you find those people who are, you know, very good at what they do to begin with, and then people that you can continue to call upon that you have a personal connection with. I think that's incredibly important.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree.
Alright, in episode 36, Work for the Perk, Sacred talked with several others about several different topics, including banking, crafting, inventory, and how those are connected. That was an interesting discussion. Episode 37, they have class talk. He talks about the class releases in the newsletter in May and speculates on how each class will work with Dayhawk, as well as several others. And then episode 38, they go into the Scar redesign. He speaks mainly with Dayhawk about the announcement that the Scar are going through a complete redesign. The main reason for this is their legs and the spikes, and how they're not going to be able to work with generic armor that's going to be fitting everything else, which I think is a great idea.
It's disappointing though, because I love the Scar. And I thought it was cool. I thought it was unique. Never seen anything like it. Yeah, I had the concern of armor fitting that model, but I mean, I was still happy to see what they had, their original concept for it.
Yeah, I'm sure that whatever they come up with is going to be cool and interesting. They know how much everybody loves the Scar. I don't think that we'll see a very big departure from what we already have. Just something that's going to be easier for them to work with, which is totally reasonable to me.
Oh, absolutely agree.
Okay, and then Bazgrim, after his PAX East coverage, he released one video, and that's entitled Pantheon Developers Share Their Favorite Part of PAX East 2018, which is an interesting video. You know, he talks to just a couple of the devs. It's definitely worth a watch. Cleeze in Green Chat. I like Cleeze a lot. He's a cool guy. This month, he's decided to grow a mustache, and he released 3 videos in the month of May, and he has released one already in June. So, he had Green Chat number 20, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen versus Ashes of Creation, where he goes through the differences between Pantheon and Ashes of Creation. He covers features, development, and finances for both, which are all very important in my opinion. Green Chat number 21, he's got Q&A plus what's up with Pantheon's in-game music, where he answers some quote-unquote nifty-kajifty questions, informs us that we're halfway through pre-alpha, and talks a bit about the current music in Pantheon. He then released a thank you video to Pantheon Radio because he got a mug. I'm super excited for mine, by the way. Green Chat 22, is Pantheon Rise of the Fallen the game for you? Cleeze answers some more questions from the community and asks the general question, will Pantheon be the game for you? If you're worried about that, check that one out. He's a cool guy. Next, we have Pixel Debauchery and Scribble, all the great work that he's doing in Pixel Debauchery. These you can find because some people I know have a hard time finding these kinds of things if they're not just on YouTube or whatever. These can be found on patreon.com/pixeldebauchery, spelled just like it sounds. So he had 2 episodes in the month of May and 1 so far in June. Pixel Debauchery episode 6 was with the Wisdom of Condemned. Wisdom of Condemned, they're an interesting PvP guild who is also interested in most of what the game has to offer. Their interview was pretty straightforward, but as always, Pixel Debauchery has some super fun things in between. And then Pixel Debauchery episode 7 with Guild Numass. Scribble interviews the very chipper Numass who raid so hardcore their asses get numb. Pixel Debauchery episode 8 with Fires of Heaven and Sweenegg. Apparently Morgan Freeman stops by Scribble's studio and Scribble checks out the Fires of Heaven. This is his first hour-long show, which I am super excited about. Alright, next we have Thomas Bell. He's someone who's new on my radar. He released a video on Pantheon 2 years ago talking about tanks and stuff, and he just started up again this month with 2 videos, and then he just came out with another one in June.
And his videos, they've been really good. I mean, I find them to be very accurate information. I think they are pulling information from the streams they see. They get lucky whenever they open up a spell book, they pause it, they write everything down. So, I mean, you know it's stuff that Pantheon is coming out with that could have, the possibility of change. But at least it's accurate information for now. It's a lot more than some other people are putting out there. It's even more information than what you might see on the website. So if you're looking for good information, what is Pantheon going to be about? What are some of these classes as far as spells going to be able to produce? This might be the show for you.
I 100% agree with that. So on those class discussions, they've got part 1, Cleric and Shaman, and then part 2, Warrior and Rogue. And then on June 6th, they released Paladin leveling, questing, and hunting, talking about the Paladin a little bit. So be sure to go check those guys out.
His co-host name is Rob. Seems
Rob.
Like a real cool guy. I think I talked to him a little bit. But yeah, real cool guy.
Yeah, Thomas Bell and Rob. Go check them out. One guy that came to my radar as we were recording, and I was just looking through some stuff, Nathan Napalm. Have you heard of him?
You know what? I have heard of him, and I watched 1 episode, and it was actually pretty good. Like, I really enjoyed it. It had good information in it. He does a great job with his editing as well. He does a very good job of putting together a professional presentation.
I think so too. He's a variety MMO content producer who has several shorter videos out on Pantheon now. They're around 6 minutes, 7 minutes it looks like, and he released 2 videos in May and 2 so far in June. The first one in May was a progeny system discussion where he goes over what we know about the progeny system and then speculates a little bit about the details involved. He talks a little bit about what Brad and the other devs have said directly about the progeny system, and then, of course, just expands on that. And then he did some Pantheon Top 10 gameplay features also in May, where he lists 10 mechanical reasons why he's excited about Pantheon. He goes over things like what player versus environment means and how VR is tackling that, and some other things. One thing that he explains is the acclimation system and climates, and how player versus environment has been a very static thing since, you know, Warcraft came out. And it's not really player versus environment, it's player versus NPC. So they're really trying to expand the definition of what that is, which he talks about, and I agree with everything that he says pretty much throughout that whole video.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been playing some survival games on my downtime when I got a minute or two, and that does feel like a true player versus environment. The environment's out there to kill me. So I'm happy that Pantheon wants to implement some of these really intriguing ideas from other game aspects that MMOs have been kind of lackluster on currently. To put them in Pantheon, give us a new challenge, a fresh challenge. So I'm really interested in seeing what direction they're going to go with that.
Absolutely, me too. All right, and then he had in the first, in June, which was just a few days ago, Pantheon Immersion and Surprises, where he talks about several different ways that VR is trying to immerse their players in Terminus. He goes over things like why there won't be an in-game map. It's a short video, and that's the majority of it, but he has some good insights on that. Rewards Beyond Loot is his last video that he uploaded. He talks about the reward system in place and how VR might make things in this respect a little bit more interesting through things like spells, how you're going to acquire spells, and the perception system and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the perception system is a brilliant idea. I mean, it brings you back to Dungeons and Dragons, because I played it for a very minimal time. I actually played with Ark, who's, you know, one of our good friends that we talk with pretty often.
Oh, yeah.
And I would always have to do perception checks to find out quests or interesting things in the area, and that's what VR is putting in Pantheon. You're walking through, and your quests, they're coming to you. You're not necessarily always going to them. I think that is just absolutely brilliant. The immersion, it just creates this whole dynamic, beautiful brilliance. Just brilliance.
Absolutely. And the fact that they've said that the perception system is going to involve a ton of lore, and that's how you're going to get a lot of your quests and direction on where you should be going and stuff like that. I think it's a fantastic idea that, like you said, is brought directly from Dungeons and Dragons. I just got finished playing last night, and if we were a little bit more diligent in that perception just within that game, we would have done things a lot more reasonably instead of just setting fire to everything, which is literally what we did. But anyway,
love it.
Yeah. But that perception system, it's not going to work like that. Fortunately, it's going to be more passive perception, which is great. All right, so that finishes the community side of it. If you guys know of anybody else or anything we missed, please let us know, and we'll be sure to include that in the next video and in the comments if we really need to. So upcoming stuff. So the VOT, which we covered a little bit, very soon we'll be speaking with Joppa and Justin. I did, by the way, confirm that. I don't know what is too lame is, but I think it's Justin.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's happening at 6, and by the time this is out, it'll be up on YouTube, so you guys can check that out. Sacred Show has no set topics as of right now, but he always has dynamic topics that are always worth listening to, him and his little group of guys over there, and gals. You can catch his episodes at 10:30 EST every Wednesday and Friday. Thomas Bell's show is new, but he's got a lot of accurate information when it comes to classes, abilities, and skills. They have no set schedule currently, but it's a great idea to subscribe to his channel and make sure you don't miss any of those upcoming shows. Cleeze's show, I know, is weekly. As for everyone else, the VOT, they're weekly, bi-weekly. They're always coming up with stuff. And then Baz releases things kind of as he does. He's kind of our community liaison, if you want to say that. He's the guy who's going around to PAX and all the special things like that and releasing videos there. I don't know if he's going to continue to do just that. Whether or not he does, I think it's going to be great either way. Nathan seems to be releasing videos once, or maybe twice a week, and he does other stuff, so he's got some Bless videos up there and stuff like that. So I don't know how often he's going to be doing Pantheon stuff. Who else do we got? Pixel Debauchery, you can find him every week, I think. I'll have to double check that.
Yeah, I mean, what I've done, I've just gone through and I subscribe to everybody, so when they put out new content, I don't even need to keep up with their schedules at that point.
Absolutely.
YouTube keeps that for it with me. Twitch keeps that for it with me. When they post something new, I get a ding, and it's like Christmas morning. I'm like, oh gosh, yes. I forgot they had one coming out. I can catch up on this now. Perfect.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to Pantheon Radio. Pantheon Radio is great if you guys haven't checked it out. It's just pantheonradio.com. And what they do is all of these shows that we're talking about, as well as some others, they put on their radio show, which is constantly going. They have an app that you can get on iPhone and Android, I'm pretty sure. And it's a great app. The only thing that I don't like with the new release is that the schedule's not embedded. It just takes you to the website, but that's not that big of a deal. It's still a fantastic app. It works great. So what they have mostly is those shows, and then between those they have different types of music, like the Scar and Ogre metal mix, where they just play metal music for 2 hours or whatever.
That's awesome. I mean, when I go to work in the morning, I used to listen to the radio, but now that I have Pantheon Radio, I actually have that on. Because growing up, I was like, man, I really wish there was a gaming radio out there that just talked about games that I really enjoyed and played good music while I was playing myself. And now they came up with the idea, so it's really cool. I love the concept behind it. Really looking forward to see where it goes in the future. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out today.
Yes, and if you're interested in kind of the backstory of that, where they got the idea, whether or not this is the first time something like this has happened, be sure to watch that VOT interview with Pantheon Radio, and he's got a great long story about his background, how long he's been playing video games, which is a lot longer than how old he looks. So that's a super interesting episode. Okay, and then I also looked through the forums a little bit to just kind of see if there's anything interesting out there. So if you guys want to check out these discussions, I'm just going to talk about them briefly. So the death penalty seems like a pretty hot topic. So one of the first things you'll see in the Pantheon forums, if you go to general discussion, I believe, there's a thread called Let's Talk Death Penalty, and it's got 25 pages on it.
I can't imagine it's not 100 pages. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest topics in an MMO. How do you punish somebody when they die? What's too much? What's too little? I mean, it's a hot topic, that's for sure. Absolutely.
There's a ton of people talking about it, and if you guys want to get in on that, of course, you can only post on the forums if you're if you have pledged, but surely that'll be opening up more soon, and I know that they've been talking about it a little bit on Reddit, so you can go there as well.
You can do a free pledge that opens up the forums to you. You still get the newsletters, you get good news and information. It's a free pledge.
And you can post on the forums with that.
I'm about 99% positive that you can look on the forums. I don't know if you can post, but I know that you can look, I think.
Well, geez, I'll find that, and I'll put that up on the screen whenever we're talking about this. Okay, and there's a little lore bit that came out this month on the forums, and they're asking about religion, and that's a pretty interesting discussion because there was religion in EQ, and apparently it was relatively extensive. Like apparently once you create your character, choose the race and class, you then, based on those choices, decide which gods or god you worship, and then you can make sacrifices to them and stuff like that in game. This is a pretty interesting discussion about whether or not that should be in Pantheon. It seems like a lot of people think that it should, but you guys can go and check that out. And also, I always want to encourage people to check out the fan fiction section of these kinds of forums. If you're looking for a good story, These are always great options. There's some, even going through Warcraft, and whenever I played in UO, there were some really good stories that are just hidden in the forums that you guys can check out if you're interested. 2 of those were posted in the month of May. There's Faith and Family by Tech Ninja 1337 and Trouble in King's Reach by Damon. He says that that's going to be a novel, but we'll see how far he gets. I don't know him, so I don't know if he's capable of it or if he's how much he's worked on it, but that's there. Anyway.
Yeah, I like that the fans have enough heart to want to, pull from lore, make some good creative stories about a game that's still in pre-alpha. Lets you know that people are serious about this game, that the community is serious about this game, and that the creators, having that kind of back from a community, that speaks volumes to what you're creating.
Absolutely. Okay, and then I wanted to touch on Reddit a little bit. Reddit's a fantastic resource for Pantheon discussion, and it seems to be used way more frequently than the forums. Of course, it's Reddit, so it's got a huge viewer base by itself, and then, with that, it's got subreddits for everything, so of course it's going to be all over the place. But if even just the first page, if you go to the first page of Reddit, it's just stuff from like within the past day or two, which is great. So 2 little threads that I saw which were interesting. Spells are not cheap or easy to come by, and this is a thread that talks about how difficult spells were to get in EverQuest and what people think about that. And I think that many agree that these aspects should be included in Pantheon, such as the more powerful spells, more powerful level spells as well, being only obtainable in questionable areas that are, either very far away or very dangerous to get to. And some of them, I think in EQ there weren't epic quests for skills, but I know that they were talking about that being a definite thing in Pantheon. So it's kind of stuff like that they talk about there, which I'm super excited about. I don't know about you, Rezum.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think it's a good way to break up class dynamic as well. Because if you have 3, let's say, rogues next to each other, some have afforded some of the spells, some have found other spells, and some may have done neither of those 2. So you have these 3 next to each other that now have differences, and they got to play differently due to what they found or what they can afford. So I think that's a brilliant idea. Because that's how I kind of grew up in EQOA, EverQuest Online Adventures, was I didn't have the money to get spells every single level I got. But when I started playing EverQuest 2, it was almost like it was given to me. I felt like I was cheeky. So
right.
I think it's a cool idea that Pantheon is finding a good balance and is creating this class difference between players.
Absolutely. I think the question there is how easy or hard are they going to make it, and that's yet to be seen, but super exciting. And then another one is level scaling good, bad, or ugly? And it's just kind of a discussion of level scaling and what it brings to and takes away from MMOs today. And that's a long thread. I think there's a lot of good points, and I don't want to say a whole lot about that just because it seems like they're already working on that. Like there's not going to be level scaling, but there's going to be, just like in Black Rose Keep, they have different levels that have like levels to the dungeon, and the further you go in and stuff like that, that are going to be different levels. Like you'll have the first floor of the dungeon, or the first little couple of rooms of the dungeon that's going to be like level 11 to level 21, and then as you go further into the dungeon, or as you go up a level, it's going to go up from 21 to 32, and then on and on from there as the dungeon gets deeper and deeper. So you are going to have those higher level dudes coming into those lower level zones in order to get stuff for them too, so you'll still have the ability to get help from those guys who are just passing by. And it seems to me like that's going to be a rather widespread thing. They seem to like that idea a lot, so I don't think that level scaling is going to be noticeable, like if it's needed, you know what I mean? But I think that they're doing it in an interesting way that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, I'm huge on that topic too. I mean, I always used to think it was exciting in EverQuest Online Adventures when somebody of a higher level would come through my zone and they looked really cool. It was inspiring, and sometimes you would see them using spells by you and like, oh my god, what was that? I gotta get it. Tell me how I can get it. What level do I need to be? It was a very inspirational feeling rather than a demeaning one, like, oh man, they're higher in this area, they're gonna take our stuff. No, that's not how it was at all. They didn't want to mess with anything you had going on. They had their own game plan going.
Yeah, and I think that goes into the other discussion too, spells being not cheap or easy to come by. If you're a low-level enchanter and you see this guy running around doing something crazy, who is also an enchanter, you're going to ask him, hey man, how did you do that, and what can I do to get to your level? And that's going to, create many more social opportunities, which I think is my favorite part of Pantheon so far.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100% with you.
Fantastic. Okay, so that's pretty much it for us, you guys.
You know, if you like the content you heard today, just make sure you shield bash that like button in the face, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes.
We'll continue to be your source for Pantheon news. Be sure to also leave us a comment below, and we'll post links to the show that we talked about today. Thank you guys for watching. We'll come back to you later. Bye.
Peace.